Hi, I'm Michael Walsh. I'm a recovery coach, interventionist, and family consultant based in Victoria, BC, and I'm one of the partners at HBR. I'm also a person that has lived substance-free for many years. I'm very passionate about my work and will likely do this for the rest of my life. I am thrilled you've chosen to participate in home-based recovery, and I do hope your experience is enriching and life-changing. Today I'm going to be talking with you about recovery coaching, something I know a lot about. I'm an early adopter of recovery coaching in Canada, having begun my private practice in 2014 when there were very few recovery coaches providing this service. The niche offering of recovery coaching was not a well-known component in the treatment field in 2014 in Canada, and I found myself often having to educate folks on what a recovery coach was and how they could be useful in walking alongside someone's recovery journey. Today, recovery coaching plays an emerging role in the treatment field and is certainly more widely spoken of and utilized in practice than ever before. A bit later in this segment, you will hear from some of Canada's top recovery coaches. Our intention with me having interviewed these recovery coaches is to inspire and motivate you to make good use of your recovery coach as you progress through the home-based recovery program and hopefully beyond. I was working in public health in Victoria when I first heard about recovery coaching in 2013. It intrigued me because it hit all the marks of how I wanted to work alongside clients, and it wasn't therapy or counseling or within a private, institutional, or acute care medical setting. There's nothing wrong with therapy or counseling or private, institutional, or acute care medical settings, as they are all needed. I just thought my skills were better suited as a recovery coach outside of those domains. Have you heard of a recovery coach before? Have you had an opportunity to work with a recovery coach? And if so, how was that experience for you? Are you excited and curious at the prospect of working with a recovery coach within the HBR program? So what is a recovery coach? Recovery coaches are well-trained, credentialed paraprofessionals within the mental health, substance use, and addiction treatment field. Recovery coaches have a broad skill set, including, for example, utilizing motivational interviewing, whereby the recovery coach uses skillful questioning to guide a person to their own meaningful outcomes. Some of the questioning uncovers the impact a client's substance use or behavior has had on their lives and the lives of others. Because it is a path of self-discovery, it carries much more meaning for the person entering recovery. As a result, recovery usually begins sooner and lasts longer. What makes recovery coaching such a strong approach? Recovery coaches meet clients literally where they're at in their life and assist in developing a plan forward, always helping to remove barriers to change and help creating a roadmap with tools that work and fit for the client. Recovery is personal and treatment is certainly not cookie cutter. Recovery coaches utilize modern and progressive approaches to help clients change their relationship to the use of substances. Throughout the entire process, we place greater focus and awareness on the personal choices, actions, and responsibilities related to your lifestyle change. You identify what you need, what you want, how you're going to get there, and then you and the recovery coach execute the plan together. The implementation of recovery coaching combined with therapy within home-based recovery was a very exciting prospect for me. I already knew the value of recovery coaching and how it can assist to reinforce a person's recovery trajectory, and then to use it from start to completion within an online treatment program with a therapy component was, for me, novel and groundbreaking. We know recovery coaching on its own works very well. We also know that combining a recovery coach in tandem with a therapist, when appropriate, provides two perspectives which work very well. The first perspective is the work with a therapist, which acts as a rear-view mirror of sorts, tackling the deeper core issues from a person's background and history, taking a look at where you've been. The second perspective is where the recovery coach meets you exactly where you're at today and helps with the practical and functional components of changing your relationship to alcohol or drugs and everything beyond that. I often say the relatively easy part is stopping the use of substances. The harder part is recreating your life without the use of substances and making it meaningful and purposeful. Now let's go ahead and listen to the recovery coaches I interviewed, having asked multiple questions around all things recovery coaching. I hope you enjoy it.
A powerful partnership to have a coach walking along beside someone going through this program. From my own experience going through a recovery program or treatment program, and remembering the amount of discoveries I was making along the way. And, some were subtle and gentle, and some were like smack in the face of, oh my God. And to have someone like a recovery coach to help process that, to help unpack it a bit, to help the recovery stay connected to who they are and why they're there and what their goals are. Because there will likely be some difficult times through that 30 days. And to have that person there that's, there 100% to support the recovery and be there for them so that they are successful and they hit all of their goals, and to be heard and understood, I think would be a tremendous gift. And I wish I had had a coach going through treatment like that.
I think the main role of a recovery coach within home-based recovery is motivation. So from the beginning, keeping them, if they're a few days ahead of starting the program, keeping them motivated, keeping them engaged throughout the process, I think is motivation feels to me like the biggest. It's so easy to fall into, old ways of thinking and old ways of being, and staying motivated through the connection to a recovery coach, I think is going to be huge for people. And then working together with their therapist, as we talked about, if the therapist is helping them with specific issues, but the coach is helping them stay focused and motivated and moving forward, then I think that's going to be a great combination for the program. And then, of course, getting them through the end of the program and then into, what does life look like after being in the program, and how to stay engaged and motivated in their recovery afterwards, I think is that connection piece, right? You're there from the beginning, you're there throughout the program, and then continuing on for as long, I think, as needed.
Yeah, you know what? This is so much a team effort for getting people to where they want to be. I see it as a therapeutic approach is very much looking at the issues of finding out why people had the need to use or drink. And it's a process. It's really likely a lifelong process. And so important, because so much of what has happened in the past can still affect where we're at today and how we're functioning today. So with that broader understanding of self, people can start to look at it not as a fault-finding process, but just a fact-finding process, and being able to move forward from that place of understanding, of compassion for self. And I think it's crucial. I really do. I think that good therapy paired with recovery coaching, which is dealing with more, as mentioned before, where are you at right now? And where do you want to land? Where do you want to be? And, I like to look at it as not a either or, but a both and situation. So paired together, working together with the recovery together with a therapist and doing that very particular kind of work, which I'm not qualified. As a recovery coach, I'm not a qualified therapist. I'm not a qualified counselor. So that's not in my wheelhouse. That's not in my suite of skills. So I stay in my lane on this side, which is to help the recovery to establish where are they now? Where do they want to get to? What is their pathway of recovery around substance use, around, and this may fall into many categories, whether it be, their life moving forward for recovery, their life moving forward within their important relationships, within their job, and how are they going to live this life without their substance. So it's really two separate roles completely. But when you combine them together, they can work synergistically to create an even broader result for the client.
Well, in my own experience, both with clients and then in my own recovery, I've used therapist mostly to deal with childhood issues that are still coming up, past traumas. And with coaching, I've used it more to deal with forward-thinking goals. How am I going to achieve them? How am I going to stay accountable to them? And so in that way, I view the therapist more about looking backwards and a coach more about looking forwards. And maybe it's not always the case, but that's a way that I can see them working together, is to keep one focused on helping with things that have come up in the past and one working forward to, like really following what the client wants to. The idea for me of a coach is allowing the client to set their own goal and then helping them achieve it, rather than being told prescriptively what they need to do, which I believe is more in the counseling and therapist realm. So that's the way I think they can work together, past and then present, future.
Anytime is the best time to use a recovery coach. We have clients that come to us and they have never even considered changing their relationship with alcohol or other drugs, and they're in that pre-contemplation stage, trying to decide, like, is this something? I don't even know why I'm calling you. My wife suggested it, something along those lines, and we can support that person and start to move them through those stages of change and support them. And maybe it is getting into treatment. Maybe it's getting into home-based recovery. Maybe it's getting into some other modality. And that's a great time for recovery coaching to be used. Another great time is upon completion of a treatment process. I can help that person maintain their accountability needed for their, whatever the term is going to be, a relapse prevention plan or recovery plan. And I can support that person and make sure that they're staying on track with that. I think another time would be years into recovery. Some people plateau in their recovery and they just don't know where to go next, and they feel like they're doing everything that was taught to them. And we can support that person to try to look at different areas that may need some refreshing or introduce new ideas that can enhance their recovery.
Working with a coach, you own your life, you own your recovery. A coach will walk beside you and support you and see you as your full self, as your best self, but will not be there to direct you, to give you advice, to tell you what to do. That's not the job of a coach. So the benefit is really taking ownership for your life and having agency and autonomy over your life, which I think is so important. We all crave that at different times in our life. So I think that's one benefit. Another benefit I see is being able to develop recovery capital, which is all the assets and resources that you have that will support you in recovery, and not just recovery, but I think in your quality of life. and having a fulfilled life. And a coach can support you looking at what already exists for you. So really taking a strengths-based approach, what already exists in your life that you can draw from and use and put into that recovery capital bank. And then what might be some gaps or deficits that would be really important for you to pay attention to and to cultivate to support you in your recovery goals. So I think those are two big ones that I see coming from working with a recovery coach.
A recovery coach can be in someone's life that is like no one else in their life. Most people with substance use disorders, they've burned their relationships to the ground, whether that be with their parents, their spouse, their children, their employer. And I'm sure that they have received so much advice, so many people telling them what they should do, what they need to do, how they need to run their lives, what they need to do to make these other people happy. And often I think a recovery coach can be that one person that can reflect on what their strengths are, that can promote their own self-efficacy, their own, look at the good that they're doing, and reflect that back to them. Help them to establish autonomy in their lives, helping them to understand that they're not bad people, right? Helping them to find their own answers and develop that inner strength. And there's no one else like a recovery coach in a person with substance use disorder. There's no one else like that, even whether it's often a counselor or therapy or parole officer, employer, spouse. All of those roles have a certain expectation, or they are the expert, and much of what they may think or say is imposed upon the person with the substance use disorder, rather than those answers and what is important and what is that pathway to recovery, what their life without their substance will look like. That is something that can be established alongside a recovery coach. Just having somebody come alongside, not imposed from the top down, not pushing from behind, but coming alongside, just being that good friend that maybe they've never experienced before, never ever had somebody believe in them, had somebody just hold space for them, being that safe place to land.
I truly believe that being able to relate to people, because I'm in recovery myself, I think is a huge tool that I employ all the time, in an appropriate way. I don't share more than what I think is necessary in terms of client sharing. But I think it does give me an ability to really empathize, be compassionate. I think many counselors and therapists and coaches we're all empathic people. We wouldn't be in this field if we weren't. But I think being that I've literally been through where they're at is important. And then I think the way that I've gone about my own recovery is I've explored many avenues. I've explored the 12-step route. I've explored meditation, yoga. I'm a yoga teacher, different spiritual practices, Buddhism, Buddhism and recovery and the 12 steps together. I've somatic experiencing, hypnotherapy. So I've explored those all through my own recovery. So I bring that knowledge and that breadth of knowledge to people so that I can offer them many different choices in their menu, which I think is really what it comes down to, because everyone's recovery is unique. So to try to give someone, this is what you must do, instead of here's a menu of options, and being able to speak to the fact that I've actually explored those options myself personally, I think is an important way of not just relating, but building trust with people, because I'm not just suggesting something that I wouldn't do myself or that I haven't done myself. And I think that's maybe my edge, or my specialty, I think, is just really open-minded to all of the different modalities of healing that are available to people in recovery.
My experience is my expertise. When I come into a family, like I said, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Most of the time, they can say I can come off as arrogant or brash. What they can't, we won't be fooled on, is the fact that I'm going to paint everything with the same brush. Like, it's going to be right across the consistency of that. But when I go into saying my experience is my expertise, been there, done that. I've been doing this for a few years, and I went to work on it, and I went to school when I started doing it. There's mistakes I made early on that I'm not about to make. You and yourself will call me sometimes to pull on my experience. I'm pretty unflappable when it comes to that. But really transmitting to a family that, you know what, we've seen this before. You don't own a unicorn. We're going to be able to help this situation. And making them understand that, wow, this guy at the front here is going to be able to deal with what's coming up. It's a security that they feel need. They're like, hey, ask Bob. He's going to know. And I do it one step further, because I have a lot of people under my employer, and I'm like, the common sense should rule the day. Always, if I'm not available, I'm going to say, you know what? What would Bob do? Pretty well common sense. I don't believe in anything any other way. And I know my staff often says, like, you like give and delivering the truth, no matter how. And I'm like, yeah, as kind as I can. But when we look at sick family units, and again, anyone that is in the recovery business will know, like, there's an elephant in the room sometimes. I'm going to have no problems exposing that elephant.
On an internal basis. So what I mean by that is, what I discovered in my own work, my own recovery experience. What did I discover internally about me that I can bring to the work that I do with the clients? And there are many things that came up, but the one that comes up to the top right now is something I just describe as the capacity to be with a client in whatever state that they are. And I found this to be really, really helpful, because every client is different. Their situations are different. And it can be a problem if I'm having an expectation that things are going to move a certain way. I do think programmatically, but how I navigate that journey with a client comes from the inside, and being able to sit with, sometimes it's just really uncomfortable, and be with them in that moment. I find that makes the difference, from a trust perspective, but also from things not escalating. So that's one thing, the capacity to be with whatever discomfort there is. The other thing that comes up, and this was explicit, all caps, underlined a couple times, in coaching training, the importance of being able to measure the impact of what you're doing. I mean, that's something that I knew from my previous life in business, but it's not really about that. It's nice to know from a practice perspective that things are going well. But the most important part of measuring effectiveness is for the client to ultimately be able to embody the progress that they've made, right? And if you're not able to measure it and communicate that in a way that works for the client, they're going to be left wondering. And that's that's not a great recipe for recovery success.
Not afraid to speak from the heart and challenge my clients when necessary. I'll say things that may make my clients want to say mean things back to me, and this is okay. And I often precede any of my, I precede the relationship with that. I'll often say to my clients, this is part of my role. I'm going to say things to you that you're going to want to say things mean back to me. And that's what I want to do, because I know that that is something, we found something that needs to be addressed. You're also going to say great things to me. The process is their journey, and often we need to hear the things others are afraid to say to us. It's often a key motivator for change, and I've received great feedback from my clients around that. They say that that is exactly what I needed, and I appreciate your willingness to challenge me and hold me accountable.
But I think there's two parts to the way that I want to answer this. And the first is not so much skill based, but what recovery coaches bring to the table as people. And this is really important, I think, especially in the context of how recovery coaches can work with other practitioners in someone's overall recovery journey. And so the first part is about this combination of things that recovery coaches often have, and that is lived experience, both usually having struggled themselves somewhat, and having also the experience of figuring that out, and the knowing that it's often much more complex than it looks like in the beginning. And so that drives this big picture, the ability for the coach to have the big picture and understanding of what may need to go on with the client. So that's one piece that's really important. I think the other piece is, and this might be a little bit of a less traditional answer, I don't know. Kind of sounds like something Steve Jobs would say, or would have said. And it's really this combination of creativity on the one hand, and curiosity on the other hand, because those are really important in driving the coach's ability to, at least I believe, adapt to the situation that they're faced with on a meeting by meeting basis with the client, or interaction by interaction basis with the client, because it's, as you well know, Michael, things are surfacing all the time, and those may drive the need to course correct, and so that curiosity needs to be there to help uncover it, and that drives, I believe, more formal skills like motivational interviewing, that can keep a client going, support a client in adapting themselves, right? The other part of it was creativity that I mentioned, and it's about, as I mentioned before, course correcting, which is an easy thing to say and hard to do. Like, you have to be able to deal with what's right in front of you as a coach, and that requires, I guess, ultimately what I'm saying is creativity, but the stuff that goes into that. And that's often about the coach having done their own work, such that they can just bring that when it's required. So I think those are two kind of pieces that come together. But there's the third piece is just knowing that there needs to be continuity for a client, that you as the coach can be there for them on this journey, which is, sometimes described as a roller coaster. Other times it's described as climbing a mountain and, getting up and having to go back down so you can go back up. It's very important that the client feels that the coach can be with them along the way. So there's continuity, and there's curiosity and creativity. Those are the three that jump to the top for me.
I think the important skills that recovery coaches offer clients are being solution focused, being an accountability person, being very supportive, open-minded, not having an agenda, being goal-oriented and forward-thinking. Another skill that I think is really good for recovery coaches is to not sound like a therapist. Trying not to use that language that a therapist would use. Often we're trained in different techniques, and those techniques have specific language. And for somebody who's been around recovery or been around therapy for a number of years, they get very attuned to that language. And some people, when they hear that language, it really doesn't impact them or affect them based on different experiences they've had. So for me as a recovery coach, I really try not to utilize my counseling skills. I try to utilize more of my friendship skills, right? Sitting on a bench, sharing a coffee, watching people pass by, having an open conversation, and trying to support my clients that way.
Two things come up for me around this. One is, and this is based on my own personal experience going through recovery myself and going through an intensive outpatient program, which was very, very helpful and, set me on a powerful path of recovery. And when I walked out the door, it was like, now what? Working with a coach after leaving that IOP program supported me in continuing to build up my recovery capital and helping me continue learning and discovering myself after the program. So from that perspective, it was, support. Recovery coaches can support recoveries after they leave their program to continue on their journey and support them. And, again, like help them remember why they're there and what future they're trying to create for themselves. And that leads into the second thing that came up for me around this is that coaches very much support and work with clients and recoveries to help envision a desired future. What do you want your life to be like? What do you want to be about? What will fulfillment look like and feel like for you? And a coach can support you in getting there. And I think that there is a gap in the profession or in the realm of recovery right now. Counselors and therapists play a very, very important role and tend to focus more on uncovering past what happened to you, and versus a coach that can acknowledge what happened in the past and knowing that and knowing what's present for you now, what do you want to design for yourself and how do you want to live today and tomorrow?
As a recovery coach, my role is to be very solution focused. So it's forward thinking, goal oriented. I get to meet with the client, The client may have a program that they've been following. They may have come out of a residential treatment program. They may never have been to treatment before. They may be working with other therapists, and they've been working on certain aspects of their recovery or no recovery at all. They may be at that very beginning, that contemplation state of change, and not even know where they want to go. And that's where I can support my client. I can fill that gap where they're working on something specific, but not really knowing how to integrate it into their life, or they may have another concern at home that they're just not finding the support they need with a therapist. And so I find, as a recovery coach, we're very well-rounded individuals in this field, and we can engage with the client in a number of different areas. I'm here as a support person. I provide a ton of accountability, which I often hear is one of the greatest assets we have. And really, I have no agenda. And I think that's the greatest part of a recovery coach. I just show up, I meet the client where they're at, and support them moving forward.
It's such an emerging field in Canada. We're kind of still in the Wild West phase of it, I think, a little bit, which I hope will become more of a professionally recognized field soon. But for me, where I see it filling gaps is a number of ways, both pre-treatment. I mean, lots of people have to wait to get into treatment. And so while they're on the wait list, having a recovery coach to help them when they're getting out of treatment to transition into life again, which, as we know, recovery is, it doesn't happen in a treatment center. It happens once you get home to your family, or if you're staying at home, then you need guidance and somebody that can help you with that transition if you're coming home from a treatment center. So I think the pre and post treatment can be a big gap. And then, well, I mean, for me, I think I don't like saying it's instead of, because I think for each person, their unique recovery journey is just that. And so it's a nice combination with a therapist. It's a nice combination to have a recovery coach as well as a sponsor. So sometimes I think it's not necessarily, it's a yes and instead of an or. So when someone is just trying to figure out whether or not they need treatment, it can be a great way to have a conversation with someone that's one-on-one. And I like the fact that with recovery coaching, there isn't that hierarchy. It's not therapist is up here and client down here. It's meeting people where they're at and having that even playing field, level playing field. So being able to talk to someone through, what are my options? What can I do? Because we know that the trying to muddle your way through what's available in terms of services is sometimes a very daunting, overwhelming, and frustrating experience. So I think there's a lot of information that a recovery coach can help, whether it's with the family or the individual, to just make a plan for themselves on what they're going to do, whether that's going to treatment, not going to treatment, connecting them to other resources that they may need, everything from medical and physical and all of that stuff. There's so many ways to just help navigate through a plan. And then in terms of once that recovery journey has begun, what I believe a recovery coach really does is champion that person and help them to, set up all the areas of their life. It's not just counseling, because a counselor focuses on, a particular area of a client's life. Whereas with a coach, you could be helping them with their healthy eating, sleeping habits, spiritual practices, literature to read, and all kinds of, just everything, physical activities to help organize, creating a schedule. There's just so many things that a recovery coach can do that is far beyond the scope of what, a therapist would do. And the accessibility of a recovery coach, I think, is huge as well. Being able to talk to that person more regularly than your prescribed 1 hour a week, or 50 minutes or whatever a therapist gives you as an hour these days is I think another huge win for recovery coaches.
And the simplest answer in my experience anyway, so with the work that I've done, but also the recovery coaches I know, the simple answer is what don't they fill? What gaps don't they fill? It is, I think the hallmark of recovery coaching, or at least one of them, is the ability to adapt to what clients need. And as you well know, Michael, we often don't know that up front nearly as much as we'd like to. So I think about the folks that I've worked with pre-treatment, I'll call it. So these are people that haven't even engaged a professional, so therapist, psychiatrist. They are just trying to get their head around this, like, oh my God, I have this addiction problem. What do I do? And that's a really great time to start working with someone, because it's very difficult for them to be clear on what they need. They just know they need help. So that's one gap that can be filled, sort of pre-treatment, I'll call it. I've also found it can be helpful to be working with clients when they are in treatment, and that might be at a treatment center, or it might be just working with together with other professionals. So family doctor, a psychiatrist, maybe a therapist or two, and really integrating the work that the client is doing across all of those, because those disciplines don't tend to talk to each other. And it's very important for a client to have a cohesive experience as they go through this really journey of recovery. And then the more obvious one is post-treatment, and the work naturally revolves around supporting the clients getting back into whatever home and regular life used to look like, or looks like. That can be a very difficult step in one's recovery journey. Most people that I've worked with who are coming out of a more formalized treatment experience have literally an armful of like information and what to do, and it often goes out the window because of ultimately how we work as human beings. It can become very overwhelming very quickly. So it's a natural fit there, and I think historically that's often where recovery coaching has worked. And then there's one other piece that seems to be emerging more and more today in what I'm seeing, and that's alternative treatment. So people that want to put together their own treatment plan. And there can be various reasons for doing that. I won't get into them right now, but a recovery coach can then support that process of, what does that treatment plan look like, and how is it going to be measured, so that everyone can understand how it's going to be affected, how it's going to be effective, and who's going to be involved, and what needs to happen when. So a wide spectrum is my answer in terms of the gaps that can be filled.
It facilitates someone coming out of an acute care facility and coming into his recovery. It facilitates so much stuff. This is, and I've heard it from well, you can get that for free at a fellowship meeting. No, I'm living with someone, or I've embedded with someone, and I'm in constant contact with someone. That is a job. All right. My fellowship, which I practice my own, and I have multiple sponsees that I've had for many years, is my duty as what I give back and what I can give back. But me, when I'm on trying to help someone, why that the future is because, the old ways, there's no way of keeping statistics, but it's been my experience when someone has better training and is more introduced to something and has more follow-up and, go to a meeting, sit down with them and tell them, this is what's going on and this is how we're doing it. There's a lot more buy-in from the client when he's not in disarray. What the fuck? They're speaking this, they're praying, they're this. This facilitates a lot of it, takes a lot of the guesswork out. I think it is absolutely marvelous that you can get people that would otherwise go in and out. Many people go in, I went to 2 meetings, didn't like what they were saying, and I'm gone. This can facilitate that big time.
So after watching the interviews that I did with the recovery coaches in various parts of Canada, what did you learn about recovery coaching that you did not already know? Can you see how recovery coaching can play an integral role in your recovery within the HBR program? Well, I hope this has been helpful for you to get a better understanding of recovery coaching, and most importantly, we hope it will help you to get the maximum benefit from working with your recovery coach within the HBR program, and hopefully as you transition out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next segment.